I titled today's conversation mind map, Money Materializes by Grace and Grace Alone. Money materializes by grace and grace alone. It only doesn't appear this way through illusory concepts of the self. Illusory concepts of the self. So lately we've been discussing the key is to be yourself, the self, prior to any kinds of illusory concepts that restrict the flow of money. As always, these videos are built on the foundation of personal experience. And I'll be referring to my book here, The Direct Path to $1 Million, Turn What You Already Have into a Fortune, which is a book that I put together as a result of being an entrepreneur full-time since 2009 and building 3 successful businesses, one in IT, one in consulting, and one through my other YouTube channel, which I grew to over 400,000 subscribers. And all of it doing what I love to do. The times where money did not materialize by grace and grace alone were the times that I was identified with illusory concepts of the self. So in today's video, I would like to discuss some of the parts from my book, as well as I would like to talk about some of these illusory concepts of the self that restrict the flow of money, generating money perhaps in a stress force-based way or no money as a result of resistance, interference patterns generated by these illusory concepts of the self. And having released these kinds of conditions, you too will start to see money show up by grace and grace alone. So, some of these concepts that I'd like to explore with you today, I got 7 of them. Number 1, I am my business identity. Which is not true. You are that which is prior to any kind of business identity. And why I teach this and why this is key is that let's say a person identifies with their product or service or what it is that they're offering and thinks that's the only way they could serve the market. They may, through that conditioning in mind, which is a bias, only hear what they want to hear, confirmation bias, when they're engaging with a prospect, rather than listening to what the prospect really desires, what they really need, what is their, as we say, their pains, their needs, their desires, their frustrations, which are all opportunities. So in other words, during prospecting sessions, during conversations with leads, during conversations with clients, and this could be online, offline, through email, DMs, etc., they are clearly stating what they are looking for, and you can then optimize your product or service or create a new business based on those needs that are emerging, which are opportunities, which is also what you genuinely love to do. And it doesn't mean you need to abandon your product or service. That need, pain, desire, frustration, opportunity that's presented, which is revealed in the conversation, can be turned into a front-end offer, which will then generate revenue for you and build a relationship with that client. The prospect or the lead will then become a client, and you can build a relationship with the client. And then they are open to, a lot of times I've seen this, they're open to what you were offering initially. A perfect example is when I had my IT business. I was one time hanging out with a friend in downtown Toronto. We went to this lounge/restaurant. It's not around anymore. It's called the Cadillac Lounge. If you're from Toronto, then the Queen West area, then you know this restaurant. So we were there for lunch, and then I ran into one of my friends from high school, and he said to me that he's opening up a bar/restaurant with one of his friends, would I be interested in providing IT services for them? Now, I had a thought, and that thought was based on conditioning. That conditioning was suggesting that I could not offer something to them because what I was planning to offer with my IT business was solutions for small offices. I did 10 years in corporate IT, and I wanted to offer desktop support, network support, etc. for small businesses and not restaurants and retail because I couldn't see, based on that condition, how I could serve them. Yet I was aware of that condition. Thought specifically arose from that condition, and I did not identify with that thought. So we went and hung out. I went over, I met his business partner, and I called up one of my mentors who ran and still does a very successful IT business. And he said, have you ever considered open source software? Maybe there's a solution here. They're looking for a point of sale system specifically. And I wasn't at that time looking to provide point of sale systems for restaurants. So if you go nowadays to restaurants or cafes, you'll see they usually have an iPad as a point of sale system. Back in 2009, they weren't doing that. So they had computers and they had a screen, and these point of sale systems, if they were a little bit more sophisticated, they would print orders to the kitchen, etc. And the more sophisticated ones even had inventory management. So this provided an opportunity. My mentor said, check out Open Bravo. He found this software called Open Bravo, point of sale system. So what I did was I took that point of sale system, I customized it for this particular bar and restaurant and offered it to them for free, actually. In exchange, we worked out a deal. I got to stay at his business partner's place downstairs, and I got to pay less rent, and I got to move to Toronto so I can build my IT business. And he then ended up referring me to businesses. I ended up getting retail clients, restaurant clients for this point of sale system, and it generated additional revenue. But not only that, it also opened up doors to acquire IT clients. That's what I mean. So if an individual forms an identity around their product or service, they may, through that conditioning, through that bias, only see what is based on that confirmation bias. And that is the result of identification to that illusory concept of the self. The self is infinite. You are the self prior to these concepts. By being the self, by that it is meant not identifying with these illusory concepts. What happens is opportunities emerge. That's an example. Number two, I have to work hard to prove my value, which is again an illusory concept of the self. You don't need to prove anything. The real self shines forth, and naturally you provide products, service, etc. And the reflection of that is money. In other words, we can say it this way. Your products, your services benefit people greatly, and they give you a wonderful, lavish, steady, dependable income as you are consistent with integrity and mutual benefit, because there's only the self. There's only the self. It just appears as all these individuals. The theater of entrepreneurship, the physical assets, the digital assets, the intangible assets, the relationships, the prospecting, the lead generation, the client acquisition, the ongoing business with existing clients, the innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership. These are all parts of the play of entrepreneurship, and all of these areas get optimized, automated, delegated, and eliminated by grace and grace alone, as only God alone exists. And we prove the point by not identifying with these illusory concepts of self that suggest separation, that suggest you need to do this or that. You don't need to do this or that in order to be that. You are already that. And in flow, all these things manifest naturally, effortlessly. Now, it took me a while to realize this because I was identified with a lot of conditioning. I came across a wonderful book in 2004 called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in there, he said something like, if you believe that money is the result of hard work alone, perish the thought. And I almost didn't want to read the book because I grew up working very hard for money, and it did create money. I worked very hard in warehouses, I worked long hours, and I did get money. But in this book, he was saying, and at that time I was in $50,000 debt. So I didn't have a harmonious relationship with money. So even though I was working hard and making money, I was spending way more than I was making, and money and I had this love-hate relationship, let's say it that way. It wasn't a harmonious relationship. It was a us versus them relationship, as I say sometimes. There's no such thing. Not me versus money, not money versus me. There's no such thing. That's just based on conditioning. Money is in harmony with you, and you are in harmony with money. Money materializes by grace and grace alone. That is the way it is. So even though he said that, and I was triggered by it, as we've been discussing, that's just a condition that's being triggered. So a condition in mind was being triggered because he was speaking the truth. That's just a concept, this illusory concept or condition that suggests that money needs to show up in a hard-working, stress-based way. It's not to say that it can't happen in a hard-working way. Yet I can honestly say it happens in a flow-based way now. Now, it may appear at times like I do a lot of things. For example, I run the school community. I do 2 videos on my other channel. I do a video on this channel. I run a mastermind, Flow-Based Prosperity. It's group coaching and masterminding. I do consulting. I travel. I have hobbies. I do a bunch of things. Yet all these things, I can honestly say, happen by grace and grace alone without trying. I have surrendered these conditions over the years. And everything emerges a lot more easier and effortlessly, more so than ever before, which is why I had created that subconscious mind program in 2018. Because like he had said in the book, there are these beliefs or conditions or illusory concepts of self. The self, which is prior to all these things, which you can try to limit the self with these illusory concepts. I recommend not. I recommend being the self, being yourself. And these concepts even are blown away. And so do the corresponding appearances of stress and frustration. They're blown away by grace and grace alone. So he said, dissolve these conditions in the subconscious mind. And then money, as he said, comes so fast you'll be wondering where it was all this time. And that is true. Because that is how it works. See, individuals identified with conditioning or illusory concepts of self or money generate resistance in the natural flow of money. Money is the result of providing valuable products, services to benefit people greatly, and you get wonderful compensation. It only appears as stress, frustration, etc. It only appears that way. Force, stress, frustration through conditioning. And you can dissolve that conditioning. And we'll talk about how to do it. Next one is, I am limited by the market, algorithm, or economy. And certainly, again, I am not limited by the market, algorithm, or economy. As a matter of fact, all these things appear to be in harmony with me, even if it doesn't make any sense. For example, 2009, when I started my IT business, there was a number of people that came up to me and said, this is a recession. Why would you want to start a business during a recession? It is not best practice to start a business during a recession. Have they not seen, and I understand why they could say that, that's based on condition. If the individual is identified with that condition, they will only see the confirmation bias of that condition. So they'll look around, or let's say they will quite often see the confirmation bias of those conditions. They may look around and they'll say, well, I don't see any businesses that succeed during a recession. Therefore, I got to share with Joseph because they have my best interest at heart, because they would like to see me thrive. They don't want to see me fail. They may say, I got to share it with Joseph that this is a recession and we don't see businesses succeed during a recession. Therefore, this idea that he had to leave his 10 years in corporate IT, which is a well-paying job. I moved up in corporate IT. I got a $50,000 debt, bought my first house, etc. Now he wants to start an IT business. This is not a good idea based on this condition. But they don't know that. That is not a good idea based on that condition. I understand. No shame, no condemnation. It just doesn't sound like a good idea based on that condition. But I am not that condition. I am not limited by the market algorithm or economy. There are ways, infinite ways. So I didn't argue with them. I didn't even debate with them. I did not even have a conversation with them. I understand. Based on conditioning, it can appear that way. Yet, I moved forward with the plan and built the business to success during a recession because I found opportunities. There are opportunities that exist during particular market conditions. If the algorithm does this, the algorithm does that. You know, on my other YouTube channel back in 2020, 21, I was getting way more views on my videos than I'm getting right now on my other channel. But it doesn't mean that now I'm not making as much money as before because I have multiple streams of revenue. I have investments. So even though it appears on the surface that the algorithm has changed, does it stop my flow of prosperity? Does it prevent money from being materialized by grace and grace alone? Certainly not. That's why I recommend dissolving these illusory concepts of the self. Only the individual in mind can place limitations on the self, which is prior to the individual and these conditions in mind. And the self is perfection, fulfillment, and infinite intelligence. And although I, in mind, may not know how the self takes care of everything, I can honestly say it does. And it happens by grace and grace alone, as fundamentally only God alone exists, taking care of everything in perfect harmony. It just doesn't appear that way through conditioning, and that's okay. No shame, no condemnation. That's why I put together these videos here to dissolve the conditioning. And again, this is not theory based on conjecture. This is personal experience. And also not just my own personal experience. This is working with thousands of businesses over the years to integrate everything in a harmonious way. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual as one. So we're speaking of the spiritual truth, the self, prior to all the things. Mentally, you can really think for yourself. Emotionally, you relate harmoniously. Physically, you do the things you love to do, and you let everything else be. Everything else is taken care of. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual as one. And the way we experience physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual as one is by dissolving the illusory concepts of self. Here's another one. If I fail, I am a failure. Now, this is another one of those concepts or conditions placed upon consciousness that I recommend dissolving. I am that pure awareness, and my real nature is perfection or fulfillment. And although I might not know the totality of what that perfection is like or fulfillment is like, it emerges and manifests in form. That is the pure consciousness. In the Aramaic Bible translation of Genesis 1:3, it says, "And God said, the light shall be, and the light was." I am that pure awareness. God's name is I am. I am that pure awareness. And the light is pure consciousness bliss, pure consciousness happiness, pure consciousness peace. That is your real nature. So this idea of failure is illusory. You don't fail. Let's say if I love snowboarding. If you fall down when you go down a slope, that doesn't mean that you fail. It means your body is learning how to do your runs more effectively. You learn when you fall down. In entrepreneurship, for example, you learn if the prospect doesn't want to do the deal with you. This is why I always say, if they want to do the deal with me, great. If they don't want to do the deal with me, great. If they do the deal with me, it's great. Why is it great, Joseph? Well, there's optimization data, And also there is money that's made, and also a client that I acquire, which then I can provide that service for them. They can benefit greatly, and I can provide additional products and services to them, lifetime client value. Yet also, if they are not interested, then I have optimization data, and I share a bunch in this book here. For example, I have these asking the right questions during prospecting. This all came as a result of prospecting, I don't know how many thousands of times, everywhere, online, offline. Rather than trying to come off as salesy, forcing them and it sounding like an interrogation, I just flow in conversation. I may say something like, what's working well with you right now, and where do you see gaps? Very flow-based. I might not say it with those exact words. I did give these statements here, which you could use as a script, but I like to do it more natural and flow-based according to my style, and that's what I teach, flow-based sales. So when I say something like that, by gaps, it means there is some opportunities that are available in their innovation, their sales, their operations, their finance, their leadership. I actually might bring those up prior to, and then they'll reveal it to me. They'll say, yeah, we got a gap in operations. What's the gap? Well, our service level agreement is X, and we're not meeting that. Oh, let's see what we could do with that. So what I'm getting at is, if the prospect does not want to do the deal, you have optimization data, and with that optimization data, you can then know what to say next time. You can come up with scripts if you'd like, or what I notice is just through the repetition of prospecting, I come up with ways on the fly, and the conversion increases. I also notice that I'm able to, in the moment, allow space for clarity to emerge. So as mentioned, the self, we allow space for clarity to emerge. And by that it is meant, I got a really interesting book here. I brought this up a number of times recently on my other channels, called The Power of Kabbalah by Yuda Berg. It was given to me by a very successful jeweler who was a client of mine. And to summarize this and why this is helpful is, they say in there that if you do not react, you allow the light in. The light, again, is pure consciousness, that perfection. I am that perfection. Although I might not know what that looks like, yet I can manifest that and experience that perfection in consciousness. In consciousness, I experience it. Where else do you experience it? You experience it in consciousness. And even if I don't know what that looks like, what this allowed me to do, which not identify with this I am failure, there's a problem with failing, there's no such thing. So if you fail, you don't even have to use the word fail if you like, or not like, whatever you'd like. To me, I don't have a problem with the word fail. It's just optimization data. If I fall down, if I fail, if I don't get the deal, etc., if I get a rejection, it's all optimization data. I'm ecstatic about it, actually. Because, as I mentioned, I either get the client, great. If I don't get the client, great. I get optimization data. Then I can optimize accordingly. We can optimize our prospecting, our lead generation, our consultative selling, our copywriting, our direct response marketing. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And I might not do it myself. I may bring on a consultant, connect, like, for example, the story I mentioned earlier about reaching out to my mentor. I have a list of people that I can call to have a conversation with if I was looking to optimize any area of my business, and I recommend doing the same. We have a wonderful school community that we've created. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description. We've got entrepreneurs in there of various sizes of businesses. Some that are making $200,000 a month, some that are starting out, some that have expertise in ads, some have expertise in finance, some have expertise in operations, in AI. It's a wonderful group. There's no shame, no condemnation, and no F's given. I say that. The school group, SKOOL, the only school that you cannot get an F in. No F's are given. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description. And everyone is so collaborative and supportive. So you cannot fail. You just get optimization data. And as they had mentioned in the book, do not react. So reacting to a condition, I have a problem because I failed. I am a failure. I am not a failure. That's illusory. that's an illusory concept of self. Clearly it is. And then what happens is the light appears. You get an idea. So through the repetition of prospecting, I found that clarity would emerge, and I would know what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, what offers to make, who to refer, etc. And the revenue would go up. And I don't have to worry about these things. I don't even think about it. I just show up to the prospecting session and or conversation with the prospect during the sales presentation, etc. And these ideas emerge. That's one of the benefits you get from dissolving these illusory concepts of self. Here's another one. I need more before I can begin. You name it. I need more, whatever. I don't know. Conceptual thing, emotional thing, physical thing, whatever thing. You don't need this or that. In order to be that, you are already that prior to all these things. You don't need more. That is more than enough, and you are already that. I am that. That is more than enough. It can seem unbelievable. And you don't need to take my word for it. You just can apply what they mentioned in the book here. Don't react. And the light appears. The light of awareness, which is that pure consciousness, bliss. It appears in form. It has a form to it. We call it the solution to the seeming problem, or the prospect's pains, needs, desires, frustration. It is through clarity the solution or the product or service for that. And that's how you create businesses on the fly. That's how you optimize your suite of offers that you have. That's how you come up with additional products and services. And even if you come up with an idea for an additional product or service, it doesn't mean that you need to create it. Now we have AI to help with that. We also have business partners that we can bring on. We could refer to businesses that offer it, and you can get a cut out of it. That's what I did in my IT business as well. And a bunch of what I did in my consulting business, which generated millions of dollars, is joint venture partnership deals. Their products, their services, they were even collecting the revenues, and they would just give me the checks or the splits through PayPal or direct deposit or something like that. And they would take care of the fulfillment. What I'm getting at is there are infinite ways. And even if you don't know what these are, these can emerge in flow. They do emerge in flow, which is why I always teach remain in flow. And flow is just the result of being as you are, the self. The natural result is flow. You experience flow, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual as one. And these illusory concepts are no longer identified with, and you experience, practically speaking, money materializing by grace and grace alone. Now, this section here in the mind map. If you want a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. I've included parts of a presentation I did for an organization. It was a sales organization, and they brought me in, and they paid me a number of thousands of dollars to do a presentation for them over Zoom, their sales team. And I was focusing more on flow-based sales. So they had a very refined system. They had a great way of going about doing things. And they realized that they were getting the results while being in flow. And there was stress and frustration, and the results were diminishing while not in flow. So they brought me in to talk about flow and bring them in flow and establish them in reality, establish them in the self, so that flow manifests and they naturally then experience materializing that money through offering their product or service, and it happens naturally by grace and grace alone. So by that is meant prospects naturally emerge, leads naturally emerge, they know what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, etc. All these things happen naturally in flow, as fundamentally only God alone exists. Now, I didn't use this kind of lingo, the spiritual language, when I was having this conversation with them, but I was able to communicate it in a way that was pointing to the same thing. I use this kind of lingo on this channel because on this channel and other channel, we do fuse the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical together, and we get what all this is pointing to, and we understand it from many different layers and know that it's all in harmony, not conflict, not physical versus emotional, emotional versus mental, mental versus spiritual. All of that reconciles in flow. And I've been saying this now since 2017, since I made flow a priority. Conditions fell away, and the illusory concepts of self dissolve, and money materializes. Not just money, relationships, lifestyle, whatever it is that you desire, whatsoever things you desire. Whatsoever things you desire, pray as though you have received them, and it will be yours. Now, you pray in flow. What I mean by that, here's what I mean. When you know you have that already, everything spontaneously emerges accordingly, and you know that you have that in flow. You don't need to convince yourself. So you are praying in flow because, again, Mark 11:24, pray as though you have received it, as in you have it. You know that you have it in flow. There's no doubt, no uncertainty, no resistance, no hesitation, in flow. So the vision was 5 contacts a day, 5 days a week. You may have this for your prospecting. And I go in my book into depth on prospecting, lead generation, client acquisition, ongoing business with existing client, not in an overwhelming way, enough for the point of this book, which is the direct path to $1 million, turn what you already have into a fortune. You have everything that you could possibly ever want. Again, from personal experience, being an entrepreneur since 2009, 16 years as an entrepreneur, everything to make your first $1 million is in this book here. So, prospecting, I get into nuances in the book. But one of the things that we may find to be very helpful is to set a quota. Generally, I do this with organizations, and it's effective. I did this with myself. I don't do it right now because of how everything is set up, but I found it to be very effective when I did it. 5 new contacts a day, 5 days a week. And this is what they had as well. Now, as we go about our day-to-day initiatives, as we go about prospecting, I always teach, go about it from a state of flow, And so I borrow the flow process from the wonderful book, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and I live by it. So number 1 is clear goals at an abstract and granular level. So there's the business goal, the monthly income goal. You may have your projects, your tasks. We're applying this to prospecting. We're applying this to client acquisition, but you can apply it to whatever you'd like. Now, the goal is to get in contact with 5 new prospects a day, 5 days a week, could be offline, online, etc., and start the conversation and engage in conversation with them. So the clear goal is at the macro level. The vision is whatever it is, $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month, $30,000 a month, $50,000 a month, whatever it is. Number 2, so as you start the conversation with them, let's use offline as example. You go to an event and you're interested in meeting 5 new contacts. You start the conversation with them. Now, there's immediate reporting and feedback. There's qualitative indicators and quantitative indicators. Qualitative indicator is flow. It's, do I experience flow as I am having these conversations? If not, relax into the flow. Relax into the flow. Release the need to control. Surrender into the flow. Just ease into the flow. If you feel awkward, fine. Thoughts that suggest they don't like me, these kinds of illusory concepts of self, thoughts spawning from these illusory concepts of self, that's where you have the opportunity in flow to dissolve those illusory concepts of self. You just don't identify with those thoughts. Body relaxes, emotions regulate, you engage in the conversation. Now, you may also consider quantitative indicators. So this is where we track conversion. How many conversations do we start? How many of them booked a phone call with us? Or how many of them met us in person for coffee? How many of them became clients? Out of those that became clients, what were the revenues generated? Were we making offers in the back end for ongoing business, etc.? And tracking that, that's what you call quantitative indicators. You may or may not consider it. When we get really granular in consulting, we consider it. And the businesses that I work with that do $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 a month, they value the quantitative indicators. So that is an indication, no pun intended. Number 3, this is where we have harmony between challenge and skill. So you start the conversation flows. There may be some challenge. You don't know what to say, doubt, hesitation, don't react. This is the flow spot. This is where you access the flow. You can access the flow in any one of these areas here, but that challenge meets skill. Access point, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about in his book, that is where you access the flow. I call that the G spot, the God spot. That is where you experience the grace of God. Challenge is then transmuted into skills. You refine your skills in the moment. Practically speaking, this is not conjecture. This kind of stuff is experienced, and you embody it in experience during the prospecting, during the lead generation, during the public speaking. That's why I don't run away from challenge. Why would I run away from challenge? Literally, where challenge meets skill is the G spot, the God spot, where God emerges from the space out of nowhere, the light of pure awareness, that pure consciousness bliss is manifested as the client acquisition, the skill that's cultivated, etc. You literally manifest that into form. You embody it. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And then actions and awareness become one. There's no this versus that. Distractions are excluded. Fear, doubt, indecision tapers away. You may experience time distortion, and the activity and the person becomes autotelic. Now, as you continue to apply this with consistency again, and again, and again, and again, not only do the numbers go up, the flow increases, the ease happens, opportunities show up. Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, opportunities multiply as they're seized. Well, you're seizing opportunities, and they do multiply. You get more doors open. You get more opportunities emerge for additional products and services that you can offer. Money starts to increase, and things just start to happen even more and more so. It is always like that. It's just that resistance, which you dissolve in the flow, was generating the illusion that it was not that way. So these illusory concepts of self dissolve in the flow, and money materializes by grace and grace alone. Now, another benefit, and I'm not going to get too much into detail on this, we did talk about this in the presentation that I did, is all these areas, you can segment it accordingly. I segmented in my subconscious mind program like this: spiritual, intellectual, physical, family, social, career, financial. They all reconcile. So the way I teach it is have a definite chief aim or vision, and it could be a specific number goal, monthly income goal, yearly income goal. For sales professionals, generally I like to do the monthly income goal. I did that with myself, and it was effective. And then I relate everything that I do in my business over to that: the innovation, the sales, the marketing, operations, the finance, the leadership, the prospecting, the lead generation, the client acquisition, the ongoing business with existing clients, the optimization, automation, delegation, elimination, part or in whole or in combination, which again, all this stuff I talk about in my book, and whatever else, the emergence of the physical assets, digital assets, intangible assets, and the relationships that all play a role. They all emerge in harmony by grace and grace alone, to be in harmony with the vision in a mutually beneficial way. And also I find as these conditions dissolve, there is a reconciliation of the various areas of life. And I relate all these areas of life over to my vision, and my vision to all these areas of life, and all these areas of life in harmony together. Again, it's not this versus that. It's this and that in perfect harmony. I am that pure awareness, and my real nature is perfection, harmony, bliss. So physical, intellectual, spiritual, family, social, career, financial. We start to notice that these areas also improve, and they also contribute to the definite chief aim. An example would be you start meeting some friends socially. They're entrepreneurs, and they're talking about the same kind of stuff that you're talking about, that you love to talk about, and they're supporting your vision. Even your family may start to get interested in what it is that you're doing. It was kind of surreal for me when my family came over a number of months ago, that they actually asked me for signed copies of my book, which was very interesting. That is just wild. I mean, I never thought back in the days that people were going to ask me for signed copies of my book, my family, and some friends as well. Now, I don't form an identity around it. That's just a natural result of being the self. The self individualized in form is all these things that you genuinely desire to do. That's why I just followed the steps in Think and Grow Rich. I dissolved this conditioning, and money started to emerge more so by grace and grace alone. And I played my roles. The roles that I played, for example, moving up in corporate. I played the role in my IT business, helping all those businesses, in my consulting practice, through my YouTube channel, helping so many people. And all of it happens giving and receiving as one. And then also these other areas of life also tend to be in harmony. So financial areas, even physical, this is fascinating as well. I all of a sudden got that idea of putting together a morning routine a while back for meditation, running, lifting weights, etc. And all of that also improved. They're all in harmony. They're all related. I find that that is one of the therapeutic benefits of being in flow. And reconciliation is, it's not this versus that. You realize it's not this versus that. Because also while in flow, what happens is there's a reconciliation of divergent thinking and convergent thinking. Divergent thinking is seeing things from many different perspectives. Convergent thinking is going with well-established solutions. Is well-established solutions better than new solutions that are emerging? Is new solutions that are emerging better than well-established solutions? Actually, I don't think that way. I may do something that is a well-established solution, or I may do something that I've never done before, because I found that some of the solutions that were well-established are effective. And then I found also that the solutions that were emerging were also effective. Sometimes I do A, sometimes I do B. Sometimes an idea may emerge, which is a creative solution, yet it is not the solution to apply. Someone may come up with an idea and say, I got this great idea, let's do this, let's do that. And it sounds like a great idea, yet it might not be time for that idea. And you have that discernment while you're in flow. So it's not that that idea is not going to be applied. It may be applied later on, or it may not be applied. You know how many ideas that I've come up with, and many that I've spoken with, that I never put into place? And there's no need to force myself to put these in place. If it's time to put them in place, we'll put them in place. If it's not time, great. Just like how I mentioned earlier. If I do it, great. If I don't do it, great. All of it is like a big dance, and that's what I mean by money materializes by grace and grace alone. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.